Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Saccone Prince with SacconePrince.com, where we make motivation personal by introducing you to yourself. And I know a lot of you have heard me give that introduction several times during the years, but I wanted to make sure that we focused on what it is that I really, really do. When I say that I introduce you to yourself, it means I ask questions of you that helps you think about who you are. And during the course of what I've been doing over the years, I've actually went from personal development, factoring leadership development, and now even an aspect of our leadership development, which is our mental health. And when I started writing my book, my current book entitled Heal, I wanted to make sure that I covered what I believe is an unrecognized issue that a lot of us deal with. Everybody in this room has had a childhood. Now, whether it was a good one or a bad one, that's up for debate. But the reality is there were things in our childhood that shaped us today. And if we see behaviors that keep showing up, things that keep happening, that keep reoccurring, one of the things that I like to do is I like to step back, because I tell people it's not what you do, it's why you do it. It's not what you do, but it's why you do it. My personal development journey started when I was in college. I was dating this young lady, everything was going well and good. And then our relationship kind of went south. And I started asking myself, why? Why? Now, we'll ask questions of everybody else, but rarely do we ask questions of ourselves. I said, why is it that in 80% of the relationships I've been in, it was a woman that ended it? I started asking myself questions. We'll question everybody else, but rarely do we turn that scrutiny on ourselves. And I started trying to figure out, why was I in these type of repetitive relationships? So I started looking at me and the things that actually went into making me who I am. I want to talk today about the ABCs of inner child healing. The ABCs of inner child healing. The first A is awareness. It's awareness. Are you aware of current behavior that may have its root in something that happened in your childhood? It may be with a relationship. It may be your need to succeed or to prove to somebody who may not even be here that you're worthy. How you view yourself, how you understand yourself, what you have to offer the world is so important for you to know. Because I tell people all the time, until you know who you are, anything can stop you. But once you know who you are, nothing can. So spending the time to get to know who you are and what you have and what you bring to the table is so important, because if you don't take the time to establish that early on, you'll always be a slave to somebody else's opinion of you. You'll always be second guessing yourself. And I'm not just talking about in business, but in your relationships, in your home, in the organizations that you're a part of. If you don't know who you are, you find yourself being at the mercy of other people. If there was anybody in this group that was in law enforcement, even though they may not be on the clock, if something were to happen right now, they have a duty and a responsibility to respond because of who they are. They may not be on the clock, they may not even be in uniform or have their equipment, but because they know who they are, they respond. So when we know who we are, it's not hard for us to show up for the people that need us, those that we've been called to serve. So awareness of things that are going on in our life that have affected us from our childhood, and they're still showing up today. Like I said, in my case, I found myself wondering why I was so beholden to relationships that weren't serving me. Why was I so easily and eager to forgive and to go back and to try again? I had to start asking myself the question. I became aware of something that was still deep-seated in me that I needed to work on. And I will tell you this, that was over 30 years ago, and it's still a journey. I'm still working on it. And that's going to bring me to the C later, but we'll get to that. So the first letter is A, awareness. Being aware of how we act today that may have its roots in something that was in our childhood. Now, the thing of it is this, is it a negative trait? Because we have some things like from our childhood that are good, some things that we are proud of, discipline, structure, accountability. Those kind of things can actually help us in our life. But then if we find ourselves trying to live up to somebody's expectations, if we just fall apart when somebody's disappointed, when somebody lies to us or doesn't show up, why do you go over the top because of that? And that's a question that really only you can answer. That's why I say we make motivation personal by introducing you to yourself. Because I believe all of us have the answers we need. We're just not asking the right questions. And not of other people, but of ourselves. So awareness is the first thing that we need to do, especially when it comes to our inner child healing. But the second thing, the B of the ABCs of inner child healing, the B is to believe that we can change. So many people are so settled into the fact that they are who they are, that I am this way and there's nothing that can be done about it. Well, if you want to change, you will change. If you see how devastating, how damaging it is, if you see how it's holding you back and you're not living a life, a fulfilled life, you'll understand, hey, I can make a difference. I can change. Now, I will say this, some of us, we can do it on our own. Some of our childhood traumas and wounds weren't that deep. They were misunderstandings, they were favoritism. But there are things that can be done to rectify that we can do on our own. But some of them were so traumatic. Some of them were so heartbreaking. Some of them were so scarring that we need some help. We need somebody to come alongside and actually walk us through a process of letting that stuff go. I never would have imagined myself being in this space of talking about mental health and talking about the need for healing. But it wasn't until I started to see my own need, that I actually made an effort. Because it's not just enough for me to get free. Somebody once told me, said, the sin of the desert is not telling people where water is. The sin of the desert is not telling people where water is. If you've gotten some relief, if you've made a breakthrough, if you've gotten somewhere in your life and you can help somebody else, why not do it? So many of us, we're so conscious of ourselves that we don't want anybody to know that we have issues or that we've fallen or that we've messed up. I have 5 kids. My oldest son is 37 years old. I had when I was 17. I was quick to tell all my kids, I said, okay, first of all, look around. You're fertile, okay? You're fertile. So don't even think about it. But telling them and letting them know, and I didn't name all the names, tell all the dark, dirty secrets, but I let them know in no uncertain terms, it was hard. It was hard for me as a father, seeing my oldest son, seeing the situation that he was in, and there was nothing I could do about it because me and this mother weren't married. It was hard for me, and I emphatically didn't want that for my children. I didn't care what they thought. I didn't care how they felt. I wanted them to understand and know this is heartbreaking, and I don't want you to go through that. So we have to be willing to actually share. We have to be willing to help other people. But first, we have to be willing to help ourselves. HEAL is an acronym for Help, Elevate, and Learn. And the help starts with us. The elevation, our understanding starts with us. And then the learning is not just for us, but for other people. I remember I was speaking in St. Louis last year at a Becoming a Better You conference. And I told him, I said, me becoming the best version of myself means nothing without you. Because I can't be the best version of me and just keep it to myself. That's selfish. And that's not who we are. Somebody once said that the rent we pay for living on earth is service. And so just because I've achieved and I've overcome and I've gotten some breakthrough in a certain area, my thing now is to turn around and help somebody else. Now, does that mean I have perfected it? No, because if I waited till I got to that point, I would never be talking. I would never be sharing. I would never be pouring into. But all of us, we can share a little bit because we know 10 minutes more than the person behind us. And there's stuff that we can do to actually help somebody else. But we have to believe in the fact that we can make a difference. First, with ourselves. It's just like to tell you on an airplane, put the mask on yourself first, and then help somebody else. So many other people are so adamant about helping other folks while they are bleeding. Understanding that we have to do some self-therapy and some self-care to show up as the best version of ourselves. Because that's really the way that we encourage other people. If we're always sacrificing, if we're always working, if we're never doing anything for ourselves, we are teaching other folks, don't do that for you, because you don't matter. It's always about someone else. And I'm not saying that we need to be selfish, but I'm saying that we need to set a precedence in our families, in our businesses, about taking the time to actually help ourselves, but set a precedence for others. In my book, Leadership That Lasts, Passing on 10 Solid Principles to Ensure an Enduring Legacy, I talk about that very thing, about setting up the next generation to succeed. But we're also teaching them to do the same. Because if we are in leadership, and our world are about it's me and mine, what I'm doing and how great I am, we're teaching them as well. That same philosophy and that same mindset. But if we show them what it means to actually have a servant heart, they in turn take on that. And then notice the title said principles. We're not trying to make cookie cutters. We're actually helping them to understand what the principles are and why they should be followed. So us being able to believe that we can become better versions of ourselves shows up in our attitude, shows up in our behavior, shows up in how we pour into other people. Because without that, all they see is someone who is selfish and self-serving. As a leader, we need to be selfless, and we need to model that. So the ABCs, awareness, belief, but the C is continuing. I was going to make a change, but then I said to myself, you know what? That seems like it's a light switch. You can just throw a switch and you're going to just automatically change. And it's not. You have to put in the work. It takes time. It takes falling down. It takes getting up. It takes messing up. But you have to be willing to do that, because that's the way incremental change happens. Our pastor would oftentimes tell us, if it comes fast, it won't last. So we have to take the time to put in the work to better ourselves. And again, we are setting the precedence. Even when we mess up, we need to fess up. But if we are so insecure about what people are going to think about us, how they're going to feel about us, and how they're going to talk about us, we'll never step up to the plate. But if we know who we are, if we understand what we have to offer, if we understand that people are watching us, then it's not really that hard for us to actually step into that role and to admit when we're wrong and when we're falling short. I tell my kids all the time, there is nothing wrong with needing help. Nothing wrong with needing help. There is everything wrong with needing help and not being willing to ask for it. When you're too prideful, when you're too arrogant, when you're too self-sufficient, that you don't realize that I need to get somebody to come alongside and help me. This is my sixth book. One of my books, actually I had it, it's a third one I had printed, but it's the first one that I wrote. It was entitled, Are You Smart Enough to Play Dumb? A Guide for Starting and Running a Small Business. Because I ran into a lot of headstrong entrepreneurs. They knew everything. They had all the answers. And they would miss out on so many things because they didn't want to talk to nobody. They didn't want to get around somebody smarter than them and be quiet enough to learn something. And even being in this group, I make it a point, I try not to sit at the same table every week, because I want to learn about everybody in this group, and I want them to learn about me. And I don't always have to talk. Again, are you smart enough to play dumb? It's not that you're dumb, but you're learning. You realize I don't know everything. So I'm continuing to learn. And we are lifelong learners. The question is, are we applying what we've learned? When I wrote this book, I wanted to make sure that I shared my knowledge up to this point. Now, as I grow, I may learn something new. I may change. But as of now, this is what I've come to the conclusion. That all of us, we have some kind of childhood memory that continues to affect us. Sometimes it haunts us. And because of that, is showing up in our life. And if we don't take the time to work on it, if we don't get the help that we need to heal from it, we'll find ourselves repeating the process over and over again. And my goal is to have such a fulfilled life that I feel like I've had a second childhood. I want to get to that point. I want to get to the point to where I experience joy just like a brand new child. But what that takes is me healing. Tom Cruise said, you may be done with your past, but your past isn't done with you. So how many of us are allowing our past traumas and hurts to hold us back from the relationships that we could have? I'm going to share this and I'm going to be through. In fact, on the paper, on the table, if you go to SakonaPrince.com/heal, at the very bottom, there are two videos. One where I talked about the inner child, and this was last year, but the other one was from 2 years ago. And it talked about the holes in our lives. And some of us, we were damaged. We had holes. Imagine, in fact, your life as a bucket. And on the side of the bucket, there were holes. I don't care how big the bucket is, the capacity of the bucket is limited by the holes on the side. You may have a hole at the bottom, a hole in the middle, even a hole at the top. If it's at the top, you have more capacity because once you pour something in, it doesn't run out until it gets to the hole. But if the hole is at the bottom, it limits the capacity of the bucket. Some of us, we've had holes in our life in our trust. It's real low. So we can't trust people. Some of us have holes in our lives that are in reference to our love. It's hard for us to love and to express love. My thing is this, I don't care what the hole is. Let's look at plugging it. Let's increase our capacity. Let's fix what's hurt us to the point to where we can actually make a difference. Not just for ourselves, but for the people in our lives. And with that being said, I'm done. And I do have copies of my book, by the way. I brought copies, so for those that want to buy.